Okay, I'm Stephen Downs, and this is part 2 of my live streaming video on learning Next. And it'll pop up here in just a second. I need to get the URL for this so I can tweet it. There still doesn't seem to be an easy way to do that, so you'll just have to bear with me for a second. Well, I actually go find video on learning Next, and it'll pop up here in just a second. I need to tweet this get the URL for this so I can tweet it. There still doesn't seem to be an easy way to do that, so you'll just have to bear with me for a second. Well, I actually go find video on learning Next, and it'll pop up here in just a second. I need to tweet this get the URL for this, so I don't need that or any viewers. But hey, who knows? All right. So recapping from yesterday. I worked with the Next.js in the tiny letters here by Vercel, which is a cloud hosting company. It used to be called Zeet, which promotes itself as the React framework for production. And React, recall, is a front-end framework, runs on your browser, and Next is a back-end framework. It works on your server and sends content to your front end. So what I did yesterday is I built a Next.js app, edited the page, built navigation between the pages, and worked on assets, metadata, and CSS, and got down through to the end of styling tips. And so we're going to start today with pre-rendering and data fetching, whatever that means. And I have an idea of what that means, but again, I haven't read any of this stuff at all, so I don't know what exactly that's going to mean, but I have a sense. So I've been working in an application called Visual Studio Code. This is it on my screen. Sorry about the dark view. I'm not really a fan, but oh well. So Visual Studio Code is made by Microsoft. It combines a text edit, Windows Explorer kind of thing with all my files and directories on the left-hand side, a text editor in the big window, and then a PowerShell terminal at the bottom where I can run commands. And in fact, the first command I'm going to need to run is the command to start up my server so that I can actually work with the code and see the results. So starting up the server, trying to remember what the command was. I think it was npm run dev. It might be right. Nope. Maybe I'm in the wrong directory. Yeah. Let's go to the subdirectory here. Next.js blog, which is where all my code actually is. So cd Next.js. Let's see. Oh, gotta be in here. cd Next.js blog. Now I'll try running that command. That's better. Very good. So I can hear my computer running over there. Started server on localhost 3000. So now if I go to my browser, so here's where it was yesterday. I just tested it this morning to see if it was still running through the sleep. It was not running, but now I'll try it again. And here it is. And this is my sample thing. Oh, it actually removes my link to my content. Oh, that's not so good. So because I have other content, right? I have posts posts. What was it called? I can find it here. Posts, first post dot, and now you don't type the JS. So we'll come back here, first post. Right. So, and there's the link back to home. But I've removed my link here. That was the last thing they told me to do, was to create this new start page. And here it is. But yeah, I don't see the link anymore. I can create the link. I know how to create the link, or at least they told me yesterday how to create the link. I'm just going to go to first. See, here's how you create the link. You have to import the link from Next link. Let's make sure we've done that in the home page. The home page is index.js. There it is. And I haven't. So let's do that. We'll import the link. So this function is a React function, and it builds links for me. Hence the name, right? And then I actually use it. So I'll copy this. And we'll go back to index.js. And let's put it down here. Actually, let's put it in here. This is just stylistic. It has no meaning at all. So I'll paste this. Now it would just link to itself, right? So that's not so good. But I'll just write first post here. So this is the text that will display in the link. And then you know, see how it says link, and it's actually an HTML element that corresponds with link up here. So where do I want it to go? I want it to go to posts, and then first post, and that should do it. I'll hit Control S to save. It should update that page right away. And there it is. And now my links work. So yay, I remembered that from yesterday. Yeah, I know I had to copy the code, but still, I remembered it. Now what's that other, oh right, that's me live streaming, so that's always going to be there. This is me live streaming on the YouTube. So as you can see, I peaked at 4 viewers. I'm back down to 1, which might be myself. But if not, hi. So okay, not bad. There is the chat. So I'm typing hello in the chat. You might be able to see that if you're watching. That's just on the other screen here. You see I have a second screen going. So I'll be able to see that no matter what's on my screen. Yeah, if you're going to do live streaming, totally recommend a T-screen setup. Definitely the way to go. All right, so let's go back to the instructions. So we got to the end of styling tips, which was just some tips. And we'll go to next lesson. Pre-rendering and data fetching. Big cool stuff. Well, okay. So okay, we'd like to create a blog, but we've added no blog content. We need to fetch external blog data into our app. Yeah, that would be cool. All right, so Next.js is pre-rendering feature, and then okay. So learning objectives, right? I always skip those because I don't care. I know that's sad, but okay. If you're continuing from the previous lesson, right, so we can skip. This is stuff we've covered. Okay, before we talk about data fetching, let's talk about pre-rendering. Next pre-renders every page. That means it generates HTML for every page in advance instead of having it done by client-side JavaScript. Pre-rendering can result in better performance and search engine optimization. Okay, I'm not sure. Well, okay, it's a balance, right? Oh, I see birds in the bird feeder. It's a balance. If you're rendering on the server, you're adding all your HTML code, then you're sending that. So you're actually sending more data. But if you're rendering on the client side, the client computer has to run JavaScript in the browser, and running that code might take some time. So it's a balance. They've chosen to just send the data, send the HTML. All right. When a page is loaded by the browser, its JavaScript code runs and makes the page fully interactive. This process is called hydration. That's new to me. Okay, you can check that pre-rendering is happening by taking the following steps. You can see that your app rendered without JavaScript. Okay, we're not going to do that. I believe them. We talked about what I believe and what I don't believe in part 1, so I won't go over that again. You can also try the steps on localhost, but CSS won't be loaded if you disable JavaScript. That's interesting. Okay. If your app is a plain React app without Next.js or without Next.js, there's no pre-rendering, so you wouldn't be able to see it if you disable JavaScript. That's another thing too, right? A certain number of browsers don't want to run JavaScript. People don't want to run the code. So, but if you don't run JavaScript, you can render pages that need to be rendered. All right. So, pre-rendering versus no pre-rendering. Initial load. These are some interesting slides, right? So initial load, pre-rendered HTML is displayed, JavaScript is loaded, then hydration happens, and then the interactive components become active. No pre-rendering, the app is not rendered, hydration happens, and the app becomes interactive. So, yeah, you see, you get your pre-rendered HTML right away, and then the live stuff is done after, versus you don't get anything, and then your live stuff is rendered. All right, so which of the following is not a benefit of pre-rendering? C, right? They mentioned search engine optimization. They mentioned working without JavaScript, so it's got to be C. And I am right, because I'm not always right. We saw me make mistakes in the previous section. All right. 2 forms of pre-rendering. Static generation and server-side rendering. Static it generates HTML at build time. Sometime prior to when the person requested the page, versus server-side rendering, where it generates the HTML each time somebody asks for a page. Yeah, that's really important. It's like getting plain web pages that were written in advance, like with a text editor even, versus like if you get something from WordPress or Drupal or a content management system, each time somebody makes a request, your server has to run. My website, Grasshopper, is a mixture of both. All of my posts, I do static generation. I create the entire post and I put it in a post directory so that when you request it, you're just getting a flat HTML file. That's it. Fast, simple. But for my personal learning application, where I'm creating these posts, I do my rendering on server side. All right. static generation, server-side rendering, per page basis. Next lets you choose what you're going to do, because and actually you can choose any of these four things: static generation, server-side rendering. Well, okay, there's only two things. Static generation or server-side rendering. So, and if you do static generation, your page is built once. It can be served by a content distribution network, CDN, and it makes it much faster. Totally. Marketing pages, blog posts, which is what I do, help and documentation, etc. All right. So let's first focus on static generation. All right. So when would you use server-side rendering? When your data needs to be up to date with every request. That's the only time. And that's right. Okay. Static generation with and without data. We're not actually building anything here. It's getting kind of dull, but I guess we need to cover this stuff. But hey, we got 3 consecutive or current viewers, so hi 3 viewers. That's awesome. I think that's a new high for one of my live videos. All right. So static generation without data. Okay, so that might be just like an about page or whatever. And then static generation with data, that might be an actual blog post page where the content of the blog post is in a database or something. Static generation with data using get static props. Okay, so it's an async function called get static props, so it's a specific function. Runs at build time, okay, and inside the function you fetch external data and send it as props. I don't know what that means. Send it as props. Properties, return props, ... Okay. So essentially, get static props allows you to tell Next.js, hey, I hate it when they say hey, right? There's this whole thing where they use the word hey. It's almost like an extra quotation mark. This page has some data dependencies, so when you pre-render this page at build time, make sure to resolve them first. Or even more simply, this page needs data from the database. Get it first, then create the page. In development mode, get static props runs on each request because, we don't want to be messing around with that while we're just developing. All right, so let's use get static props. It is easier to learn by doing. True. So we'll use get static props, get static properties to implement our blog. Okay, good. So we'll now add blog data to our app using the file system. Okay, so we could be calling from a database, but that's going to require some setup, detract from the main point. So we're just going to put the data in the file system and we'll get it from there to start. Later on we'll get it from a database, I'm sure. Create a new top level directory called posts. Okay. We worked out last time that top level, this is top level. Got a bit of a cold. How do I catch a cold in the middle of a pandemic? You tell me. I mean, I'm social distancing everything. I haven't seen a person for like a week. Longer. All right. Create a directory. So go to the top level directory, create a directory called posts. Okay, so this is the create directory or new folder command in Visual Studio Code. Here's my new directory, and I'm in it now. Come back to the instructions. You'd think I could do this side by side. Yeah, but it'd be really hard for people to see. Yeah, we'll leave it like this. I mean, this text is small enough as it is. All right. Inside post, we'll create two files, pre-rendering.md and blah blah blah.md. So MD stands for Markdown. Markdown is a type of encoding which is like HTML, but it's way easier and it's converted into HTML. So, all right. So here's pre-rendering.md. So let's highlight that, right click, copy, come back into, okay, so pre-rendering with a hyphen. So, I mean, posts, this is for a new file, pre-rendering.md. You need a bit of a memory to do this kind of stuff, right? And I'll hit enter. So now I'm in it, right click, paste. I could have used Control V as well. All right, so you see these three lines, that's part of the markdown. This hyphen here that'll be a list item. All right, the double asterisks will be for italics or bold or whatever, I forget. Okay, so that's one. Control S to save it. Let's make the next one. Okay. SSG-SSR. Nice unobscure choice of names there, guys. Okay, so we'll copy this. Okay, oh, I see. Static side generation, server side rendering, SSG, SSR. Okay. So, clicking in posts, making a new file, SSG, SSR.md. And we'll paste the content. This time I'm using Control V because my hands are closer. Okay. And this is actually the content we've just read, right? So, okay. Now, Control S. All right, so that's easy enough. But I'm just creating some files by copying and pasting. It's not really hard. All right, let's go back to the instructions. Okay, you might have known, yeah, I did notice that. Has a metadata section at the top containing title and date. This is called YAML front matter. Yet another markup language. Just a simple key value kind of language, which can be parsed using a library called gray matter. Okay, that's useful. And I wonder, it might put that into the head or something. I don't know. Okay, never mind. Parsing the blog data on get static props. On get static props, not with. Okay, whatever. Okay, let's update our index page. Pages/index.js using this data. We'd like to parse the markdown file and get the title and date and the file name, which will be used as the ID, and then list the data on the index page sorted by date. So that's pretty cool, right? And we mentioned this previously. We don't need to keep lists of stuff. Basically, if we want to add a post, we just put the content in the directory, and then this thing will go through the directory, find whatever posts there are, in the directory and present those. So, like that. So, yeah, and this is where they'll go. Index page, get static props, and it'll put the content of our pages there. So we'll do that on the next page. Okay. So first, npm install gray matter. Okay, so gray matter is actually a separate program completely outside Next. It's an npm node package, it's a node program, node package manager install gray matter. So that's going to be, now you notice they have not told us this. This is a problem, right? First install, right? So like, where am I putting this? Am I putting it in the file? No, I'm not. See, I know where I'm putting this. I'm just doing this for suspense. No, I need to run an npm command in my terminal, I think, to install gray matter. I'm pretty sure of that. But am I 100% sure? Doesn't say. But let's click on this. Maybe it'll give us a hint. Nope. Okay, here we go. Install with npm. There's our thingy. Right. So I am right. Now, here's the problem. It's not a big problem, but it's a problem. Right. I'm already using this terminal window to run my server. You notice it's actually running. I don't have a command prompt. Now, I could do one of two things. First of all, I could stop my server by hitting Control-C, and then confirm, stop, and then enter the command, and then start up the server again. Pretty simple. Not a big deal. Or I could open a second terminal, right? So, and you do that by hitting the plus. See? And now I have a second terminal running. Now, that's what I'm going to do here. So now you see I have two terminals. Node, where I'm running my my server, and PowerShell, a place where I can execute commands. So I'm going to execute my command here. So there it is, and it executed the command and installed the package. Do I need to restart my server? Well, technically no, it's still running, but sometimes when you install things you need to restart. I'm going to do that anyways, just because it's a little bit safer. You know, I'm not going to have any unexpected things, so Control-C to stop, terminate batch job, yes. Now it's stopped, and now I'm going to start it up again, npm run dev, just like before, and now it's started again. So, see, it's not a big deal, and just in case I'm restarting it. That's a pro tip. Okay, now we're going to create a library. That's going to be a collection of JavaScript code for fetching data from the file system. So we'll create a top-level directory called lib. I call it lib. I imagine some people call it lib, but I call it lib. So top level, new folder, lib. There it is. We're in lib. How do you know we're in lib? I bet you. PowerShell. No, the terminal is still in just JS. But if I wanted to move the terminal to lib, I'd have to do cd lib. All right. Okay. Now we're going to create a file called posts.js with the following content. Is it going to tell us what this does? No. Alright, so let's see. It's going to import file system, path, and matter from gray matter. It's going to build the name of the posts directory. And now there's a function that it's going to create called get sorted posts data. Probably does what the title suggests. So I'm going to read the files from the posts directory. We're going to collect. See, so we're mapping the file names, which means that we have a list of file names and we're going to map that or associate it with a list of something. Map it to, well, an array or to a function. File name replace. Okay, so right. Well, where does that end? Doesn't it? Where does that end? Way down there. No. Way down here? Yay, no. I wonder if there's an error in this code. No, it ends. No. Where does that end? It's gonna end here. This is the only place for it to end. Wow, that's a lot of mapping. So for each file name, we're going to get a set of values, the ID, the full path, and the file contents, and then matter result, which is the metadata. And then we're going to combine the data with the ID and return it, so that will add it to that. So we're going to go through that. We're going to run through that for each one of these things, for each file in the directory, and then we're going to sort them by date. So that's what this will do. It's always good to analyze. I'm going to copy these, because if you don't know what it's doing, you probably shouldn't be putting it into your code, right? Oh, now, speaking of which, where am I putting it? Okay, we're calling it posts.js inside lib. So we're in lib, create a new file, posts.js. And here we go. This is easily the most complex part of our application we've done so far. This is like using mapping. That's a kind of a high level kind of function to be using. Me with my ham-handed coding skills, I probably would have done it differently. Not nearly as effectively. And I don't know what that ... means. And I've seen it before a few times. I'm sure it means something. I don't know what it means. Maybe I can do a quick search and find out. So ... I put it in quotation marks to search, so I want that precise string. Oh, and here's a search result ... in JavaScript. Operator's reference. Syntax. Control F. Find ... It's not even in the page, for crying out loud. 3 dots in JavaScript. REST operator, which doesn't tell me a thing. So Let's assume you want to create a new object with a different name and website with the same occupation and wage. So you do this by specifying only the properties you want and the spread operator, the ... I guess, for the rest. Okay. So that's pretty cool. So I've created Adrian with a name, occupation, age, and website. I said wage, I meant age. And now I'm going to create Bill, which will copy everything from Adrian, but with a new full name and website. That's cool. Phew, another sneeze. Maybe it's the plague. Yeah, I don't think sneezing is a sign of COVID. So let's come back here. So, so I'm going to return the new ID, whatever it is, plus the rest of the data that I've already got. All right, good enough. That's pretty cool. Control S to save this. Okay. Now let's go back to what we were doing. Again, notice, you learn by curiosity, right? It's not in the lesson, but be curious. Damn it. Be curious. All right. Okay. Now we need to add an import and call it inside get static props in pages index.js. So we'll open pages index.js and add the following code above the exported home component. All right, so let's copy this. Right click, copy. Now we'll go to pages.js. Pages.js or posts.js? No, pages/index.js. Mind like a steel trap. Pages index.js. Now, and put this above the exported home component. So we look at our code, export home. So that's the exported home component. So we put this above that. And that really makes sense, right? So we're going to import some data, and then we're going to export the resulting beautiful code. So except we've got two exports. Okay. That's fine. So we're going to import get sorted posts data from lib posts. Lib posts was here. Get sorted posts data. There it is. So we're going to import the result of this function, which has just gone through the directory and compiled all of our information. And that's it. Okay. But now we have this available for us. Now we're going to export get static props, which is a function. So we're creating this function basically that can be used elsewhere in this page, or from that matter elsewhere by any JavaScript in our entire project. Because you see, that's how we did that here, right? So constant all posts data. So okay, now we've created. Now this contains all the information about our posts that we've gathered, and we're going to return it in an array called props. Still don't know what that means. Maybe properties, whatever. And it's not actually. It's not an array. It's an object. We'll call it an object. All posts data. I mean, it is kind of an array, but it's kind of not an array. There's that difference. It means a lot in Perl. It means a lot in JavaScript too, but we hardly ever work with actual arrays in JavaScript. Usually we're working with objects. All right. So I'll bet you all posts data, we're going to put that in here somewhere. Probably right where I put that link at the beginning of this video. Oh, I do have a cold. All right. Still got 2 viewers. They're hanging in there. Good stuff. All right. By returning all post data, the blog path will be passed to the home component as a prop. Boy, we're 41 minutes already. Time flies when you're having fun. Okay, so now you can access the blog posts like so. Export function with all posts data. So we're tossing that in as kind of like a variable thing. I've seen like using these, right? You can put the value of this in right into something else. Usually you wouldn't have the space here. At least that's usually how I see it, but I imagine this is clearer. So export default function home with this in here. So let's put that in first. Right. So what we're doing here basically is we're passing this value that we created here, we're passing it to the function. So there it is, right? And that's what the brackets are for in JavaScript, so I can pass values from other functions into here. All right, so now what? Now we're going to use this down here somewhere. Right? Right. Keep the existing code here, and we're adding this section. So we're adding a new section. Copy. Right. So we'll come back. Layout section. See, I put this link inside the previous section. I can just leave that there. We'll remove it later. Now this new section. So let's just make this a little more beautiful. All right. And I'm not going to need these instructions anymore. So I've got one section, which is my top stuff, and now a second section. So blog. Okay, and now my list. This is my list operator. It creates an unsorted list. Gives it a class name. That's so I can style it later, right, with CSS. And then all post data, I'm going to map, which means basically run through each item and do something with that item. And what I'm going to map is take all of that data and output it to this HTML code. So I'm going to create this HTML code for each one of my blog posts, because that's what's in all posts data. Close my UL, close my section, and I'm done. I bet you I can Control S that, because I bet you I'm done. Let's see. You should now see the blog data. Okay, let's see if we see the blog data. So here we are, and yep, it updated, and there's my blog data. This is SSG SSR, which is pre-rendering the 2 markdown files that I had created. So, good. Good. Now what? Seems like a lot of work, but you see what I've done, right? Now, all I need to do is add a new file to posts, a new markdown file to posts. And there's any number of ways I can do that. But when I've added that, it's going to automatically list it here. I think that's pretty cool. So it's a lot of work to get set up, but once it's set up, you don't need to do it again, ever. And actually, I'm sure, like, I'm building this, so I learn about it, but, you know, you would just take this entire package, that thing that I've built called Next.js blog, you would just use all of that. You wouldn't even have to build it. I'm building it here to learn about it, but you probably wouldn't have to build it. You just use it. Okay. Back to our thingy. So, now it's telling us what's happened here. Get static props has parsed our markdown files, passed it as an array. Array was the right word. And now it shows it as a list of blog posts on the index page. Some tips for using get static props. Okay. Fetch external API or query database. Yeah, because you see, get static props here, we just got it from files. But really, we want to get it from somewhere else if we can. Like, say, I don't know, GitHub. That would work, right? You can fetch data from other sources, like an external API endpoint, and it'll work just fine. It'll work just fine. So, right, export async function, and then instead of the file system, we'll use fetch. Right, we'll await fetch. And fetch, something I learned recently, is a wonderful handy dandy new command. It's only a few years old. That basically handles getting content from APIs or other websites, bringing it back, handling errors, etc. Next.js polyfills for... Now, I've seen this word a lot, polyfill. I don't know what it means. I see it a bunch of times. See, this is what I think of as polyfill, right? Plaster. Polyfill. Oh, polyfill is code that implements a feature on web browsers that don't support the feature. Okay, polyfill. Okay, makes sense. Okay. So next, polyfills fetch on both client and server. You don't need to import it. Well, you don't need to import it anyways, I don't think. All right. You can also query the database directly. So instead of fetching a web page, you send in an API request. So yeah, import some database SDK, software development kit, create the database client, and then use the database client to send a query, and that would be our stuff. This is possible because get started only runs on the server side. It will never run on the client side. This is important because On the client side, you have something called cross-origin restrictions. And what that means is you can only use data that comes from the same server that your web page comes from. So if I have a web page on downs.ca, I can only use data that comes from downs.ca. I can't just pick other databases willy-nilly. Now, there are exceptions to that. A database or an API can have something like called CORS, C-O-R-S, which will allow cross-origin requests. But a lot of times they don't. This way, by doing it from the server, it's not an issue. I just make my request from the server side, and then everything's coming from my website. All right. Development versus production. All right. Oh, I'm up to 3 viewers again. Hi, new viewer. And we're how far in now? Doesn't say. It should. Oh yeah, 51 minutes in. Okay, but we're doing good. Okay. In development, get static props runs on every request, but in production, it only runs at build time. But it can be enhanced using fallback. I've done stuff like that in Grasshopper as well. Basically, that's what you do. And I have a variable called force equals yes, which will do that. All right. Can only be exported from a page. You can't export it from non-page files. Okay. But if I need to fetch data at request time, then don't do static generation. Duh. Okay. Where does get static props run? Server side. They just finished telling us that. All right. Of course, I did have to read it. But... All right. Fetching data at request time instead of at build time. So remember, build time, we're building a page ahead of time. That'll later be accessed by a user. Fetch time, the user makes the request, I build the page, and I send it. Obviously, request time is a bit slower because you have to build the page. It's also more server intensive because you have to build the page. So if you're paying for CPU cycles, or if speed really matters, that's a factor. All right. To use server-side rendering, you need to export get server-side props instead of get static props. Right, that makes sense. Because basically what you'll be doing is you'll be telling your page, get these properties when you're handling the request. So here's the starter. It's not necessary for our blog example, so we won't be implementing it. Export async function, blah, 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 blah. Okay. It's exactly like the other one. Since it's called at request time, its parameter context, that's there, contains request-specific parameters. Like, for example, what type of data you want, what ID you want, what format you want it in, whatever. These are things that I have parameters for. These guys may have different parameters. All right. The result cannot be cached by a content distribution network without extra configuration. Important. And that's the way you want it, right? Okay, client-side rendering. So, if you do not need to pre-render the data, you can also use the following strategy called client-side rendering, right? So, you're sending raw data to the client, and then the client will convert it into HTML. I'm doing something like that. I'm playing with some code right now in my other project on Grasshopper, which is doing that. I'm sending the data from the server in the form of JSON, which is just a data structure. and then I'm actually building the HTML on the client side. Why? Because I want different people to be able to build that data different ways. I don't want to determine exactly what the client is going to do with the data, right? They can do anything they want with that data. I'm creating some library so I can do stuff with the data, but the whole idea is I send the data, the client does whatever they want with the data. Okay. Static generation without data, fetch data, etc. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to build the static parts of the page. Then the page is sent, and then the remaining parts of the page will be built by the page using external data. But of course, this is when your cross-origin scripting is going to come in. They're not mentioning it, but it's when it's going to come in. The team behind Next.js, why not just say we have, created a React hook for data fetching called the SWR. SWR stands for Stale While Revalidate. Okay. We highly recommend it if you're fetching data on the client side. It handles caching, revalidation, focus tracking, refetching on interval, and more. I like that. That's useful. That might be for a Next.js part 3 or 4 or 8. Okay, so in the next lesson, we'll create pages for each blog post called using dynamic routes. All right, when should you use client-side rendering? When you need to fetch data at request time instead of build time, right? Sure. Or maybe C. Yeah, C. All right. See, I do make mistakes. I expect to lose all my viewers now. Okay. Okay, we've populated. We still haven't created the individual blog pages yet. That would be a problem. So that's what we're going to create now with dynamic routes. Right, so the blog page is in the directory is a markdown file. We need to convert our list. Here's our list. So we need a link on this list that will show us a web page based on that markdown page. Straightforward enough. Dynamic routes means that all we'll need to make this work is the root, that is, and in Next, the root is the file location. Whoops. All right. Skip the objectives. Okay. All right. So for that, we're actually on a new section here. Page path depends on external data. So we covered the case where page content depends on external data. Okay, now we're talking about where the page path depends on external data. Okay. Right, so as I said before, depending on, like, the markdown files are put in different folders or directories, and that's how we're defining the path. How to statically generate pages with dynamic routes. So the dynamic routes, that's these folders. We want each post to have the path posts/id, where id is the name of the markdown file under the top level posts directory. Right. The ID is the name of the file. Important to keep in mind. So we'd like the paths to be just like before, right? Post SSG -SSR, except we're dropping the .md. Before we're accessing first post.js using a path, but we dropped the .js. So we don't have to make these changes yet. We'll do it all on the next page. Okay, so we'll create a page called id.js. Okay, pages that begin and end with that square bracket are dynamic roots. So, okay. So in pages posts ID, we'll write code that will render a post page. And if we had pages about /id.js, that'll be code that renders an about page. Okay. There it is. Now what's new, we'll export an async function called getStaticPaths, right? Because we need to know that posts exist and about exists, etc. I would just read the directory. All right, read the pages directory, find all the subdirectories, and you might even make that recursive. I don't know if Next does, but read all the directories and subdirectories, and then all the subdirectories of those subdirectories, and so on. That's an order of complexity greater. I don't know if you need it, but okay. So we're going to import the layout from, okay, and then we'll export the layout, and we'll export the possible paths. Good enough. And then we need to implement getStaticProps again to fetch the data for these posts. Yeah. And this is the graphic summary. All right, now let's do that. First, let's set up the file. So we'll create the id.js page in the posts directory, and we'll remove first post.js, and that means I'll be removing, I might as well do that now. In index.js, here's the link to first posts. I'll remove that now, and I'll remove first post from posts.js, and Steven.js, which I had also created. So let's remove those. Right click, delete. Yes. Alright, so now posts is empty. No posts. Okay, so we'll come back now and create id.js. So we'll fill in the layout later. Okay, so let's do that. So create a new file. Square bracket ID, close square bracket .js. Yeah, you're never accidentally going to make a file like that. And here's our code, Control S. So there's layouts from components layouts. Remember, we made those before in part 1, so we're still using them. And then we can export the layout that we've created using the layout component. All right. All these bits and pieces, you have to almost keep a mental image in your head. Here are the layout components. Here's the page building function. Here's the page content. Right, because it all fits together like a puzzle. And that's always the case. In every system I've ever worked on, including the ones I've built, that's always the case. There's no other way to do it. Probably will never be another way to do it. Well, except, artificial intelligence. All right, now open libposts.js and add the following get post IDs function at the bottom. Oh, get all post IDs. Okay, so let's copy this. All right, and now we'll go to libposts.js. So lib, remember, is our library of JavaScript functions. Sort post by data. Now we're adding it to the bottom. Yeah. Read twice, code once. It's just like carpentry. All right, so what's this going to do? Export function, get all post IDs. Okay, so this is going to be the list of directories, right? No, this is going to be the list of posts in a directory. So it's going to return an array. So here's the first post. It's going to include, and the first post will have a bunch of parameters, including its ID. Later on, it will probably have more parameters, like the content. So, okay. So return parameters, ID, and then the file name, where we're just stripping off, that's what this is, right? We're stripping off the .md at the end. If I wanted, I could leave it on by just ID file name, but so this file name's map means we're returning this for every file name in that mapping, right? So here's like the post directory. All right, good. Now I'll Control S to save. Now what? Yeah, it's not just an array of strings. It's an array of objects. Each object has a params key and contains an object with the ID key. Otherwise, get static paths will fail. Right, it's not just an array of strings. It's objects. Objects have properties. Okay, finally we'll import the get all post IDs and use it inside get static paths. Okay. So open pages post IDs and copy the following code above your exported post component. All right. So post ID, posts ID, there it is. There's the exported post component. So I'll paste this. So it's going to get the list of all of the posts. So I'll just put it right there. Right. So see, we've imported the layout from the components. We're importing the list of posts from here. And now we're going to export all the post IDs. In other words, all the list of the directories and pages. Well, no, just post. Yeah, all post IDs. So we're just doing it for posts. So we're returning the paths for all the posts, right? And then for each post we'll have a layout, which we still have yet to build. All right, Control S. Back to the instructions. Right, paths contains the array of known paths, which includes the params defined by posts id.js. Ignore the fallback equals false for now. I didn't even see that. Oh yeah, there it is. Fallback equals false. So fallback, that's probably if there's nothing in the path, you just return false or return 0. Okay, back to our content. We're almost done. Yes, we're almost done. Yes, we're almost done. Next, implement get static props. All right. We still need to fetch the data to render the post. Exactly. So we'll open lib.post.js and add this function, right, get post data. We'll add this to the bottom. It will return the post data based on ID. Okay, so let's do that. Lib posts.js. Do it at the bottom. Oops, what did I do? Nothing. Good. Control V. So get post data. So here's the full path of the post. The file content. We're going to read that full path in UTF-8 format. That's the international character set. Then we're going to use gray matter to convert it from Markdown to HTML. And then we're going to return the ID of the post, which we know is the name of the post, or the file name of the post, along with the rest of the data from matter result. Good. So, and matter result dot data is probably going to have a few things in it. Property. Okay. Control S. So now we're exporting the post content, and we'll actually have to now take that data that we're getting from here and put it into the display that we're looking at, the actual post itself. Right? And then open this. Right, we're going to import now this. We're going to import the list of IDs. Okay, so it'd be a really good exercise, right? You just have a big piece of paper and a little box for each one of these files, right? And then draw an arrow from one file to another. So if you're importing something from something, right, you draw an arrow from post.js to, in this case, id.js, and you're importing post or get all post IDs. That would give you a diagram of everything that's happening. Good exercise. I'm not going to do it, but it'd be a good exercise. Could do it, but I won't. All right. Okay. Open page post id.js. So we'll do that. And replace this line with the following code. Got to read what it says. So replace this. Okay. So we're importing two things from this, and then we're creating this function which exports. This will be the post data. In other words, the content of the post. So id.js. id.js. We're replacing. Oh crap! What line? I think it's this one, isn't it? Yeah, it is. I'm sure it is. Let's just verify. Read twice, code once. Get all post IDs. Get all post IDs. Alright. Get all post IDs, get post data. So we're getting all the post IDs, all the post data. And the last thing we're going to do is return the content for all of these posts. And it's interesting, right? Because we actually build the content for all of our posts here. And you might think, well, that's going to be slow. Well, it might be, but we're building it all ahead of time. So it's actually going to exist somewhere so that when somebody makes the request, we've already built it. So even if it takes a little time now to do maybe 100 pages or whatever, 100 posts, that's okay, because nobody's sitting there waiting for us. All right. Okay, back to the instructions. Whoops, that's not it. Let's just minimize that. So, all right. The post page is now using get post data to get the post data. Now let's update the post component to use post data. In id.js, here's the layout, just simple layout. Copy. This, notice, right? We know this is there because in the existing file we have layout dot layout. Well, now this is the dot right there. So layout. Okay. I'll just make this nice. Okay. So right, so we're going to put in the title, BR, the ID, BR, the date, BR. Okay, we could probably do better than that, but right now that's what we're going to return. Okay, good enough. I mean, you'd want some formatting and stuff, right? But yeah, we don't need it just yet. So this is what each post page is going to look like. So you hit the link for that on index.js, you're going to get this. All right. Control S to save. How are we doing on time? An hour and 17 minutes. These just take time, don't they? And I've said that before, like building software each time. And it's 12:10 p.m. and I'm getting hungry because it's lunchtime. And that's it. Try visiting these pages. Reference error, post data is not defined. Huh. Dang. And I was just thinking, well, gee, we're so close, maybe I'll just wrap it up. Maybe I haven't saved one of our files. Control S. Post data. Crap. Oh, I wanted it to be done. I wanted it to be done so I could have some lunch. Let's try the other one, although it'll be the same result, won't it? Any console logs will be displayed in the terminal window. So the terminal window is down here. Here it is. So, ooh, look at those errors. Okay. Let's look at the most recent one. Post data is not defined. At post, at process child. Yeah, well, that's going to tell us where the error happened, but we knew that. JS. All right, so let's look at this is id.js. This is where I requested it. Get post data. All right, so you see line 6, right? Line 6. Process job, okay, and now this all goes back into all the React code. So the problem is here. Same error. So okay, so get post data params.id. Get post data from live posts. See that? Our index.js, I haven't saved that. That should make a difference. Control S. Control S. Okay, well, I've saved the index page, but that really shouldn't make a difference here. No, and it didn't. Call stack. Show collapsed frames. Right, and there's that list that we saw. This part really does kind of need to work. Otherwise, I don't have any posts. Okay, those are both saved. That's saved. That's saved. Live posts.js. Oh, I'm losing viewers now because I've hit a problem. Oh, thanks, people. Yeah. Well, yeah, this is the least exciting part of the video, right? Where it doesn't work and I don't know why. Okay, well, this is his version of all of this, id.js. So let's compare what I have with the actual original code that the author created and happily shared. We'll see if I've made a mistake. So this is id.js. id.js. So right away I see I'm missing some stuff, but import from live posts. So those are the first two, and these are the first two. These three, the head, the components, date, etc., that's probably going to be from later on. So export default function post. Well, mine looks quite a bit different from his. Look. Export default function post with post data. I pass post data to it, but here, export default function post, I haven't passed post data, and that's why you can't find it. So, post data, that should do it. That should do it. Control S to save, and we'll come back to our page, which is here. And that's our page with very boring content, but that's our page. And back to home. Still don't have an actual link here. Okay, let's check and see where we are. See those two viewers? They left, and it just took me this long to solve the problem. Not that long at all. Okay, but I do want to have lunch. So let's see where we are. That's it. Something wrong. Right, so here are the exact... This is nice. I really like this. This is good thinking. Now, I thought to do it, right, I thought to go to the source that they've already provided, but here, postid.js should look like this. See, and there's, I would have found my error if I'd followed that. So, and if it's still not working, the remaining code. So, good stuff. Nice documentation. This is appreciated. Okay. So, how does params.id know the key is named ID? It's got to be the front matter, right? It's not from the file name. It's from the file name. See, just incorrect, but nice try. Okay, dynamic roots, render markdown. Right, so okay, I think I'm going to stop here. See, there's still all the like this now is to polish my page, and that we can do that at the beginning of part 3. Then we'll do the API routes and deploying, and that'll be to put it in the cloud somewhere. And that's probably enough for maybe a shorter episode. So that's where I'm going to stop. I'm going to have some lunch. I won't get back to this today. I want to do some coding on my own application. Maybe get outside. It's a beautiful blue sky day today. But watch for it in the future. It'll be there. I'm back up to 2 viewers. If you're the one who left, I did solve the problem. So, okay, so here's my page rendering nicely. There it is, right? Whoops. There it is. It's really boring, but I told you it would be boring. So, that's it for part 2. We'll do part 3 next time. Still liking this a lot. A lot. And I can imagine using this with my Grasshopper database. I can. But I have 30,000 posts. I wonder how long it would take to process 30,000 posts. Okay, I'm Stephen Downs. Thanks for joining me, and see you sometime in the future for part 3.